It is time for Take Command Mock Draft 2.0. Logan Paulson. Again, if you are listening on the podcast app of your choice, full episode of this is on YouTube, and you can see the War Room. We got it pulled up here on YouTube at the Team 980. And we have gone ahead and we're going to use Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator for this one, just to get a little bit of a different feel. Typically, we've used PFF, but we're going to go Pro Football Network for this one. We got Caleb Williams already on the board for Chicago, and that puts Washington on the clock at 2, Logan. And we've been talking about Drake May versus Jaden Daniels a lot. In our first mock draft, we selected Jaden Daniels, but as we watch more tape, we've gone to the combine. I tend to think that we're probably going to wind up taking the quarterback from North Carolina, but talk us through where you're at as you're our lead GM, lead decision maker here.
Yeah, so I think for me, obviously, Drake May is a guy that I was not very high on when we started the process, and Jaden was a guy that was just so dynamic. Obviously, the best player in college football, so his ability to extend plays, to create off schedule, to run, to hit one of the most beautiful deep balls you'll see in the draft class, I think is very intoxicating. But I think when you look at Drake May, there's just a consistency and a transferability, if that's even a word, to the NFL game that Jaden doesn't have. And so what I mean by that is when you look at his big time throw ratio, big time throws to sack ratio, pressure to sack ratio, throws over the middle of the field, big time throws over the middle of the field, all of those numbers favor Drake May pretty dramatically. And again, I'm not saying that I understand that they're different football players, and Jaden Daniels, finds explosive plays outside of just throwing the football. He runs, and that's another way he beats blitzes and does that kind of stuff. But I just think the way that you can obviously see Drake May looking at the field, the way he handles protections, it seems like an easier jump to say he projects better to the NFL level. And this is not to me say that I still don't like Jaden Daniels. I still like him quite a bit, but I just think Drake May is I don't say safer, but it just seems like a more NFL ready product. And I think his talent is tremendous. I think the way he throws football is very dramatic. I've talked about how I don't think his arm strength is quite Justin Herbert-esque, but I think it's still pretty gosh darn good. So I think all of those things just kind of continue to stack up in his favor. And so I think that's the pick at 2, quite honestly.
Yeah, so the thing that I think still gets me when I watch Jaden and Drake that emotionally pulls me towards Jaden, and I have to pull myself out of, is it just feels so rhythmic. And I feel like he has a great feel for the pocket, and he just the ball gets where it's supposed to be, generally speaking, on time. And then you have to kind of think about, okay, well, what are the circumstances that you're playing in? And this is why you watch the all 22 and not just the game tape where it's oh, well, that was easy. And it's yeah, he's got a good offensive line, talking about Jaden Daniels, a good offensive line in front of him. He's got, Brian Thomas Jr., who was 209 pounds and ran a 4.36, I think, at the combine.
It looked really good, yeah.
On one side, and facing typically a team's second best corner, because he's got Malik Neighbors, who's probably going to go in the top 6 picks on the other side.
Right.
And it's really easy to be on time and on target when your first read is almost always open. And so I think that, and then you watch an all 22 of, Drake's last college game versus NC State, and it's a mess for everybody that's not named him. Mm-hmm. You got guys dropping passes, the offensive line's losing quickly. He throws 2 picks in the game that hit receivers in the hands. And, I think you look at all that stuff and you just go, okay, well, this is more complicated than that's really pretty, TV copy that you kind of start the process with. And so I think as I've gone through it, that's why I find myself leaning towards Drake with this pick. And I agree with you. I do struggle sometimes with, the mechanics and the footwork and stuff with May, but I also understand the circumstances that he's playing in, also the pressure he was under because their defense wasn't very good. Yeah. And I think Caleb obviously has that to an extreme as well. When we're talking about what Chicago's considering, but that is my one big thing where I fall back to Jaden Daniels and I'm like, man, but the rhythm and the timing, sometimes when it's good, man, it looks so good. And I feel like there are fewer stretches of that with Drake on tape. But also you understand why, because that is very circumstantial versus the stuff that you're talking about, that you fight through that adversity make these throws, and that's the stuff that you're gonna have to do in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think again, like I like Jane Daniels a lot, but I do think the thing is like it's the complexity of the offense isn't there the same way, right? And it's not like North Carolina is this crazy, complicated, nuanced offense, but there is this kind of like simplicity to what he does, and again, he's on rhythm. And then the other thing that kind of gets me is like there were opportunities in college football with Jane Daniels where there are what I would consider NFL open throws that he's turning down, he's running, and I don't want to knock him for throwing to good receivers, and I don't want to knock him for speaking to his skill set, but I do feel like I've seen guys that have that ability turn down NFL open stuff and never develop as a passer, right? And like Lamar is, I think, a good example of a guy who's developed in that way and people get excited about, but he's an exception. He's not the rule. And so that's something I keep going back to is like, do I think he can develop? And I just want to point this out too, and I point this out on every single show. Every time we talk about these quarterbacks, it's a projection business, right? It's a projection business. So what is the most likely outcome for these two athletes at the NFL level? And right now, I do think Drake May feels a little bit less risky from what you've seen on film, but I just watched a podcast that I thought was fascinating because they're like, don't let the production trick you, right? It's the traits, it's the guy, it's the interview. And to me, I think the most important element is where they're going. Like I'm pretty confident to say whatever one of these three guys ends up in New England is not going to have a good year. Like I'm very confident in saying that. And maybe they have a terrible career because they get cooked too early or whatever. But what has Washington done to support either Drake May or Jaden Daniels? And that becomes the major question for me moving forward is this team good enough to sustain, to foster growth in a young quarterback? And I don't know. That's why Adam Peters is making all that money. But I will say that when you watch Drake May, the types of throws you're seeing are more NFL translatable. Like I've said this before, go watch a Drake May highlight. Just go type in Drake May highlights, North Carolina 2023. You'll see throws over the middle of the field. You'll see fades. You'll see comebacks. You'll see timing throws. You'll see off-schedule stuff. With Jaden Daniels, you see explosive runs and you see box fades. Some of the most beautiful box fades you've ever seen thrown in your whole life, but that is not viable consistently at the NFL level. And can he do more? Potentially, but I just see more transferable stuff from Drake May, and he's a good athlete. He's a good leader. Interviews went well. That was kind of the scuttlebutt coming out of the combine. So I'm going to lean that way for this pick.
Oh, but there's one more thing we have to consider, Logan.
Oh, what is that, Craig?
Do you hear that noise? Do you hear that?
No, what is that?
Fainting. Ring, ring. Yes, it's the trade phone going off. Now, Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator actually does often offer you trades, but I'm going to play opposing GMs calling in here for a second. Logan, Paulson, Peters, and I'm gonna make you some offers here. Hello, it's Tom Telesco here from the Las Vegas Raiders, and I have a trade offer for you. This was offered to me. Actually, I got this idea from the Hoffman Show. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a radio show there in DC. And one of our guys here in Vegas, Q Myers, was a guest on it. And I actually liked their trade proposition. So I got 13 for you in this draft. I got my first rounder next year. I got my second rounder this year and next year. And also Hunter Renfrow. I know you need a slot receiver. Can I interest you in that package for the second pick?
I would be interested, but they're picking at 14, right?
13.
That seems a little bit too low for me to go because I'm not going to get a quarterback that I want, or the quarterback that I want, and I might not even get the fourth quarterback at that spot. So you would need to probably add another third rounder for me and maybe another pick this year. Drop Hunter Renfrow. I don't care about him. Let's get some draft capital so we can make big moves moving forward. That's kind of how I feel about it.
All right. And thanks for considering Adam, Logan, Paulson, Peters.
Yes. Right.
And I hope you good luck with whatever you do. There's another AFC Wester on the phone. Ring, ring. Denver Broncos calling. Hey, it's Sean Payton here. That North Carolina quarterback. He's all I've dreamed about at night for 3 months. I'd really like him. I'll give you 3 firsts. And then we can talk about, what else we got. But I'm gonna offer you 3 firsts here as the meat of this trade. Would you consider?
I would definitely. That is something I definitely would consider. 3 firsts, maybe a couple seconds, maybe an extra pick this year. And again, where are they? They're picking 12?
It's 12. I don't have a second rounder that I can offer you this year. Sorry about that. But I'll offer you 12. If you want 81, we can talk about that. But then I'll give you my first and second next year. And we'll do 12 and 81, first and second this year, and then first and third in 26.
That's something I would definitely kick the tires on. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Craig. I mean, you're also, you're in the war room with me. We're talking through this. That seems like a pretty steep bag for me. And I still have the opportunity to trade back up and maybe get the fourth quarterback, or even Jaden Daniels if he were to slide a little bit. So that's something I definitely would kick the tires on.
I would also kick the tires on that, in part because, like you said, potentially trade back up. It obviously depends. Do I love Drake May?
Right.
If I love Drake May like Nate Tice loves Drake May, there's not a package basically that you can give me, because Nate thinks he's one of the best prospects of the last 10 years. And there's not a price for that. But that said, I also look at Denver and I'm like, I don't think you're going to be that good if Drake May is your starter this year. Right. And that's kind of, you're looking at either a Jared Stidham holdover or a Drake May this year. They just had to cut Justin Simmons. Like, their cap's a mess. Sean Payton's a really good coach and got them playing good ball by the end of last year, but I don't know how good that football team's going to be. So I'm looking at that in the way that Chicago looked at Carolina last year potentially. So I would kick the tires on that. But I think for the purposes of Mock Draft 2.0, we say, hey, Sean, you're crazy, man. Thank you. Click.
Yep.
And we just go, let's take Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina, and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. There we go.